everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Nation. We are back with another great episode. And shall I say, happy Independence Day, celebrating the removal of idiots who don't have a clue, who don't treat people right, oppressive, single-minded buffoons who like to lie, cheat, steal, pillage. Oh, and happy 4th of July to our American listeners.
I was going to say, are you talking about our country again?
Little politics joke there. It is, of course, election day. We are filming this 2 hours before the polls close. We all know what the result is going to be. It's going to be the biggest majority ever in our history. But I always like to start with good humor. Take that joke as you will. And you've already heard his voice. We've got a phenomenal guest on, a really, really good friend of mine, someone who came over last year and I got to draft with in person at the UK FFC in our Scott Fish Bowl London draft. He is the author of the ever so brilliant and incredibly multi-award winning and nominated Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. And, of course, creator of the Fantasy Football Expo at the Hall of Fame in Ohio. It is, of course, Bob Lung. Thank you for coming back for the I don't know what appearance. Let's just say like 6th or 7th.
I don't know. Yeah,
and we'll edit it out.
I'm like Rodney Dangerfield on Johnny Carson back in the day. Like you go on so many times. You don't know. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure. I think if you make it 2 or 3 more times, I'm probably gonna have to ship you some steak knives or something. I think that's sort of how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's brilliant to have you here. It was brilliant to have you in person last year for the UK FFC.
So much fun.
Let's talk a little bit before we get into the fantasy talk. We do have a lot of listeners in America, and let's talk about the expo because it is coming thick and fast. It's only a month and a half.
July 9th will be 1 month, so we're damn close. Month away, head spinning, of course. So many little things that tie up. I try to be as proactive and way ahead of everything, but it never fails. It's, I'm still waiting on this, still waiting for that, but it all comes together and everybody thinks it's just, just magically happens. And it kind of does. I sometimes go, what? I guess this got pulled off. All right, cool. But no, very excited. August 9th through the 11th, Canton, Ohio, Pro Football Hall of Fame. If you live anywhere, you can come in and check us out and have fun with us. We've had some folks from the UK, Australia, Ireland, of course, Mexico and Canada, but that's too easy. But we always have a blast. 750, 800 of our closest fantasy football friends all join us in Canton for a 3-day weekend, Friday party, Saturday party, a sports betting Saturday expo on Saturday, of course, and then fantasy football Sunday on the Sunday in the Dome. It's a really cool venue, a big dome kind of football practice field. But we do the thing on the back where they've got kind of more of a basketball courts and that. But it's really cool. And then we have a lot of fun. We play some flag football, some cornhole, all that kind of great stuff. And it's just a great time. Everybody comes, all the biggest names in the country, Bob Harris, Marcus Grant, Howard Bender, Mike Clay, on and on and on. From all the big sites, all the sites you all well know in the Americas, come to town and we all hang out and talk fantasy football. And the cool thing is, the person first time there talking to Marcus Grant, and it's no different than you and I talking, Murf. And you haven't got to experience that live yet in America, but really it was no different than what we had at the UK FFC last year. Just walk in, everybody just knows everybody. We're all friends. We all known each other on Twitter for years. We all share a common goal, which is just talk fantasy football, promote our knowledge, things we learn, the ways we do things, whether it's consistency or your great models you've done in the past and your tools and your book as well. It's just, it's just a great time. And yeah, it was so fun. Never been to London, England. Always wanted to go there. Always said that I probably should have been British because I love Monty Python, Queen, all my favorite like movies and comedy and music are 90% probably British. So I always said I probably just born in the wrong country. But yeah, it was a great time. Really enjoyed meeting you. I know you're doing much better health-wise, so really happy for that. Hannah and Hughes. Dan. Yeah, all those folks. There were so many others, and I can't remember them all, but had a great time. So yeah, really, I know you guys' big event is next weekend. I promise I'll be back, and I will be back because my wife's already said, we'll be going back so you can take me to France again. So but hopefully we'll be back in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I unfortunately won't be there next weekend. I'm really gutted. There's probably about 10 people on the earth I'll skip it for weddings. And it is one of those 10. So, I knew a long time ago the date. And then as soon as Dan told me the date, I was like, dude, I'm out. I'm really sorry. But this desire to get married in the summer is just, I don't know why, especially in this country, because it's guaranteed to rain, and you don't get
or be super hot. There's no air conditioning.
Yeah, exactly that. You got to experience that last year about how hot it gets, and it's an amazing event. This year's will be no different. There's some brilliant people going to be doing some great talks. Same place at Blue Shees. Scott Fishbowl drafts on the Friday night, and then you've got the expo on the Saturday. So it's going to be a phenomenal event. If you haven't bought tickets, make sure you do. Definitely buy tickets, and and if you've got a spare $2,000 or £2,000 lying behind the sofa, then hit Bob up, go to the FF Expo. It's something I'm definitely going to do. I'm working on a plan with my wife it's going to happen, especially with the kiddo. Now we have to go in August on holidays. We don't know when. It won't be next year because we're doing Orlando, and then there might be some surgery in there for me. So it's likely not going to happen next year, but maybe the year after, as sort of a late 40th present for me.
Perfect.
The plan will be hopefully to fly to Texas to see her school friend who lives in Texas.
Okay.
And then I pick her husband up, and him and I come to the expo because he's a big fantasy football guy.
Sounds like a great plan.
And we'll leave the kids and the wives to settle for a couple of days. So, I have told her we're going to be doing that one day. So hopefully in 2 years, in worst case 3 years time, we'll be doing that, because
I'm sure I'll still be doing it. I'm sure it won't go away. That's for sure.
I'm going to make sure you are till I go.
Yeah, no, I promise.
when I turn up, that's when you can.
I think there'd be a lot more. I think that I'd get a lot more grief than just you if I decided I didn't want to do this. There'd be about 800 very unhappy people.
Yeah, I think you'll end up with a committee of people that will be helping you going forward if you get to the point where you're like, this is just too much.
Yeah. No, and I, really with the weekend is where it becomes the most hectic, because that's when everything has to happen. And there are so many things that kind of go on at the same time. The leading up to it, I mean, I've gotten that kind of down to a science, getting the sponsors and the booths sold. I mean, heck, we sold the booths out 3 weeks ago. All 50 of them, they're gone. It's crazy. And so, and what I think is really awesome about this year's expo, not that the other ones weren't great, more than 50% of the booths were bought by first-year people.
Oh, amazing.
So that tells me, one, there's a lot of people out there that are being innovative, coming up with their new ideas, whether it's a website, app, whatever, and they're coming with their thoughts. And they went to Twitter, saw the excitement, or somebody told them about it. And like I said, every day I was getting these signups for a booth. I'm like, who are these people? I've never heard of them. And I'd go, and here's their site, and here's what they're doing. And it's like, that's super cool. And then, of course, I do an expo podcast series. So I do an interview and make a podcast out of it and put it on YouTube for every exhibitor, so that I can interview them, let them talk about what they do, so people know who they are ahead of time, name to a face, product, that kind of stuff. And it's just, some of the stuff is just like, brilliant. I can't believe nobody else thought of this. It's like, or this is a really cool thing. And really, really interesting stuff. One just recently was a young kid. I call him a kid because basically the same age as my kids. But he went to college with my daughter, middle daughter, and her boyfriend, or fiance now. And his company's called Trophy Tiers. And you got to check it out because basically he makes a base first year, and it's got a top and it's got a bottom. And then the middle, the tier, is like, it says the year, first place, second place, third place with the name. Next year, you just add another tier. And then it keeps building and building and building. So 10 years, you're this high, and 20 years. And it's like, I even went, Trophy Smack's going to love this. Because they didn't. And it's just like, and the kid's an engineer, or some kind of engineer, does it with this 3D printer.
I'm just looking at it now. That's really cool.
Like, that's brilliant, kid. Well done. So he's coming, showing off his thing. It's not horribly expensive. I think the base starts at like maybe $40-$50, and then each level is like maybe 25 with the plates.
It's a really clever idea, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, I told him, I said, I have this year will be my 40th year of my home league that I created in 85.
Wow.
And I said, we figured out it'd be 3.5 feet tall. I said, I don't know if I know first, second, and third from all of the years, but it would be hilarious and fun just to pay it to get it done. Even if we just put first place on one side and, whatever on the other. But yeah, that's the kind of things that just really, gives me the big warms and fuzzies, because it's just like, wow, how cool is that? And this kid's going to come and show it off. And he could be one of the next hits. And it's not necessarily a fantasy stats and all that kind of stuff. It's something cool and something different. I told him, I said, don't be surprised if Trophy Smack tries to talk you into working out a partnership deal, because I think that's really cool. And that's something they don't have. They didn't think about it, which he did. So love that kind of stuff. The fact that there's so many new people coming, as well as, all the past and all the top guys and ladies. Of course, we got the Queen's Classic for the second year. So very cool stuff. So
of course. And you're doing IDP this year as well.
Well, we did IDP. So last year was the big year with all the news. So the new IDP League, the new Dynasty League, the new Queen's Classic. We already had college, and then the 3 Kings Classics. So, it's just, it's been awesome. Some of the international folks that have always been in the Dawson division come every year from like Canada and Mexico. So they've actually had the opportunities to move into the Belanda League because people backed out or, couldn't make it. No. And so we just kind of spin them around and,
we see who we get this year. I'm excited to see who comes in this year. I'm wearing, for the second week in a row, don't hate me, I'm wearing my Kings Classic t-shirt.
Nope, I don't blame you. Like I said, I don't blame you, but I'm always afraid.
Bobsley, man.
Yeah. It was funny. I don't know if it was one of the ladies. I think it was one of the ladies in Queen's Classic. And she said, can I post this link on Twitter for people to buy these shirts? And I said, no, they're not for the public. They're just for the attendees. That means there's only, each year there's only 42 Kings Classic shirts max. Well, I guess there's a couple of teams that have 2, but let's say less than 50. So, if you see one out in public, that's a special thing. And I want to keep it that way. I don't want, it's not like Scott Fishbowl. It's not hey, everybody goes buy a Kings Classic shirt. No, it's only for the people that
play. I love that. And I'm glad this year, because normally I've had to get someone to ship me a shirt. Normally you said, you bought, I think you shipped it over, it didn't make it to you in time last year. So you sent it to me. Luckily this year, because you partnered with the Fantasy Cares, they have a distributor here. Do you know how quick that came? I ordered that on a Tuesday night. I got it up Thursday morning.
What?
Yeah, mad.
Yeah, they definitely got a better system, because I got mine pretty quick. And I said to him, well, last year we had to order, and then you placed an order, got them printed, and then they were shipped. He goes, oh no, now it's constant. So if somebody misses the deadline, it's not a problem. I'm like, well, that's fantastic, because I had a lot of people, of course, forgot.
Yeah.
And then come to the expo and they're like, I didn't get my shirt. And I go, did you order one? Oh, not yet. And I go, the order deadline was 3 weeks ago, bro. And so they didn't get a shirt for last year. And I said to Bob Gilchrist, I said, hey, I'm going to be sending you the logos for the shirts. And he goes, okay. He goes, don't worry about, there's no cutoff. They just ship them. It's just an ongoing thing. I'm like, perfect. So all good.
Yeah, it came really quickly. These are my wife's. My wife is absolutely annoyed at the amount of fantasy football shirts I have. But these are by far her favorite ones. So she really likes the 2022 is her favorite, which is the blue. Okay. It's like the dark blue, not quite a navy. It was like a cross between a heather and a navy kind of color.
Yeah,
that's her favorite with the orange lettering. Yeah,
it was like was it kind of like the Chicago Bears colors?
Yeah, a bit like Bears colors, but a little bit more subtle. That's her favorite. So like when I wear that, she always smiles. She likes that.
Well, and did I send you a Kings or an Expo shirt?
Yeah, I wear that.
Those are the ones I really like because they're that dry fit and they're really soft, and those are my favorite shirts. But
they are really comfortable with all the sponsors. I remember walking around my town in that end of summer last year, and I was wearing it, and people came up to me and they were like, "So what is this thing?" People had no
That's
idea.
funny because I wear it all around. Nobody asked me ever.
Yeah, no one asked me.
Like, if I saw somebody wearing a fantasy football shirt and it was something that I didn't know about, I'd be like, "What is that?"
I think it's because of the sponsors on the back, and they don't know who any of the sponsors are. But I think because you had NBC on there,
yeah,
there was another recognizable logo, and I think they were, "What was that?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I had to explain everything. But yeah, I wear fantasy football shirts pretty much all day, every day.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I do too. And then I've got a new. I got a one for the what do you call it? The Eliminator one.
Yeah, I got
Eliminators because it was Stranger Things with the underground or underneath, and so I got that one because my daughter and I love Stranger Things. And then I got the Scott Fish Bowl 14 for tomorrow's draft that we're going to, or Saturday's draft. And yeah, I just keep getting shirts, and every once in a while I got to go, I just have to stop. But I won't, because people will bring shirts and they'll give them to me at the expo. Like, hey, Bob, here, have a free shirt. Thanks for having
100%. It's got to be done right.
And I'm just like, all right, I'll just, toss these and give these to good, to charity. And, then I'll see somebody walking around with not a King's Classic, but an Expo shirt or something. Go ahead. I don't think you will. But anyway, let's talk fantasy.
Let's talk fantasy football. Yes, get your tickets to either Expo. The usual places where you got to get them. But yeah, let's talk about the consistency guide. So, I think the idea of consistency is something that people are largely familiar with, but probably good just to review it. I mean, why is consistency so important when you're getting to building your fantasy football teams? And then a follow-up to that is how would you consider building your fantasy football teams based on consistency? Like how many players would you look at having in your team that would be those consistent scorers versus shooting for the upside?
So why it's important is I always say it's really an addition to it's part of your draft tools.
Yeah.
You can make it your everything. I kind of do. But I've also been doing it for 20 years. So I kind of know what I'm looking at, know why. But for the new folks or people that are just getting into it, what it's trying to show you is how many weeks a player is achieving a score based on their position that is exceeding what would be worthy of being in a starting lineup. So in a 12-team traditional league, PPR, top 12 quarterbacks, top 24 running backs, top 36 receivers, and top 12 tight ends. That's what I call what calculates if you go and, Big Guy Fantasy Sports has a consistency tool. And when you click on edit scoring, you'll see what the clutch factor is based on that position and how many teams and whatever the scoring method is. So if it's PPR non, 4 points passing, 6 points passing. But for example, let's say quarterbacks. Last year was the lowest that I have seen that I can remember for clutch factors and for quarterbacks. Unbelievable. It was 18.5.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me considering he had Tommy DeVito and Jalen Hall and
Right.
and,
so even at 18.5, we only had 5 quarterbacks over 75% consistent last year. 5.
Yeah.
And this is at an 18.5 cutoff. So, used to be, even 5 years ago, it was 19.5, 20, 20.5. I don't remember what the highest was. I want to say it was close to 21, like 20.8. But yeah. And so that's the kind of stuff when you're looking at a quarterback and you're like, oh, I want to, Lamar Jackson won the MVP and he was 4th in total points. Yeah, he was. He was also 63% consistent, which means only 63% of his games, so a game or two over half of the time, did he earn more than 18.5 fantasy points to be worthy to be a starter on your team. That's not a guy you're drafting in round 3 or 4. No, problem is that's where he's going. Not on my team, but on the other side of that, you've got guys like Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow in the past, Jordan Love last year. Second half of last year, Jordan Love and Dak Prescott were 86 and 89% consistent in the second half. Now, their overall for the year doesn't look as good, but that second half for both those guys, now Prescott's coming into a contract year. Jordan Love is, year or two away from that as well. And those guys are going in round 6, 7, 8, 9. Just depends on your league, but and how I call quarterback chicken your league likes to play. I was in a draft. What was it the other day? Oh, it was FSGA? Yeah, it was FSGA draft. And I got Dak Prescott in round 8 or 9. It was like somebody took Allen in 3 or 4. Then, oh, no, I know what it was. Allen went in round 3 or 4. Jalen Hurts went in round 5. Then nobody picked a quarterback until round 8. So only 2 came off the board before round 8. Then a bunch went. And I did get Dak. I got Patrick Mahomes in round 8.
Yeah, bad.
And I'm like, what? And I just did it. I was like, could I wait till the turn? Could I wait till it comes back? I'm like, nah, I better not. So I took Mahomes. And then I think Prescott and Love and Burrow both went in round 9 or round 10. And it was like, now, I see that a lot more in expert leagues, people who really are into it. Home leagues won't be that way. So obviously you don't make sure your league and your league scoring, that kind of stuff. That's always important. I tell people that all the time. I'm sure you do too. But yeah, it was really weird last year. Tight ends were actually a little bit better for the first time in about 5 or 6 years.
Absolutely.
A lot of up and coming tight ends, young guys, Trey McBrides, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaids, those kind of folks. And others too. I mean, Pat Freiermuth could really take a step up this year now with Russell Wilson there, and only George Pickens is the best option. So yeah, running back, wide receivers, they're always going to be the guys. Wide receivers are always the most consistent overall. From getting a lot of players over that 70%, which to me is where you want to shoot for. 60% is like bare minimum. 70 plus is where you really want your guys. And then, I never got to your other questions. The other question about building your roster. So when I draft, I don't get crazy. They call it bullying, I guess is the new term. Go in and draft like 5 wide receivers in the first 5 rounds, right? When I come out of round 8 or 9, I want to have a complete full starting roster of consistent players.
Okay.
After that 8 or 9, then I'll start looking at upside and different players to fill roles. But I usually build to have my core starters, not of course, kickers and defenses, but running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks. I want to have a starting lineup by the end of round 8 or 9, depending on, again, how things fall out in regular leagues. When you get into super flex and all that, that gets, or tight end premiums and all those kind of things. That's when it gets kind of wonky. But in a traditional regular lineup kind of league, I want to have a starting lineup by round 8 or 9.
That makes sense. And I guess where I find this particularly useful, and I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to share some insights, what I found in particular the last couple of years in these charity leagues. So these high volume team numbers where you've got Scott Fish Bowl 3,500 plus,
right.
The JTT 600, the FFCC is going to have 300 plus, the Warrior Bowl is going to have 600 ish. Where you've got a high number of players. Obviously, building an entirely consistent roster is probably not going to lead to you having a winning team because you've got a nice floor and you'll probably advance certain phases of the competition, but you will need some high variance in. And so what I started doing with your book the last 2 years, and in particular last year, especially as you were in my draft for the Scott Fish Bowl, was rounds 1 through 4, maybe 5, pick up that elite talent where you can. And obviously you've got tight end premium, you've got super flex. You have to follow the board. I trusted my projections to quote unquote reach for guys like Deebo Samuel. And I probably picked him, a round and a half, 2 rounds earlier than others. But there were 2 49ers fans in our draft. I didn't want to take the risk of waiting. I had him at a higher rate than most people. I felt comfortable taking that play. Same with someone like Evan Ingram. There were certain players who I slotted it over the consensus who I quote unquote reached for because they were my high differential players. They were the players I felt were going to bring in large game-winning week performances on a fairly regular basis. But there is a point in the draft, and for me, it's about in something like the Scott Fish Bowl in these major tournaments, around about round 6, where you need to get those consistent guys. You need to have your flex positions in particular, and so what I call the bottom of the roster. So if you're playing 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, your running back 2, wide receiver 2, your flex positions, they have to be consistent consistent performance. I don't need those guys to shoot the lights out. I need those guys to put up a starter-worthy winning week. And if I fill my roster with those, the RB2, the wide receiver 2, and the flex positions with clutch game week performances where they're good enough to be in your starting lineup, and then you let your superstars shoot the lights out, you're going to win most weeks. Whereas some people build their tournament lineups with high variance and they shoot for the moon. And I think I get the logic of that. The problem with that is you have weeks where you dud and you fall apart. And if those tournaments don't have point scoring elements to it, then, the Scott Fish Bowl does. So shooting for a full points play kind of makes more sense. But if you're in a matchup based or a record based charity league like the Warrior Bowl, you might struggle because you might have the most points, but if you don't have the record, you don't get in. And I think you've got to have that. And so I feel like for me, rounds probably 6 through 12, 7 through 12, feel like the areas of the draft where you can pick up, and your guide is brilliant for this, picking up those guys that you will find guys in every single one of those rounds that will perform at a 60% or better clutch rate. Because there's so many guys that are undervalued because they have no ceiling. But you don't need the ceiling. You need the high floor.
Right.
When you're constructing I don't know what you think, but I look at that every year and think the way that you break it down is great because then it allows me to go and get my reach players and then go and get those guys.
No, I appreciate that. And like you said, those leagues too, those big leagues usually have a team scoring floats between, like, if you don't hit 200 points, you're not even close. Sometimes 300 can win a week. That also makes it very tough. And you want to try to find those, base players that maybe are going to get you 20, 25, which sounds like a lot of points, but in that scoring methods with the first downs and rushing attempts and, it's not your normal stuff. Now, the cool thing is you can go into that tool on Big Guy Fantasy Sports and drop in a bunch of those things. But the one things I don't have in there is first downs. I told somebody I got to create a Scott Fish Bowl only consistency thing, but right. it might be very hard to do. But yeah, because now they got kickers scoring 300 points, and it's just absurd. But it's fun, but it's like
it is mad. It's unlike anything else.
Yeah, I don't usually do well in Scott Fish Bowl. I told people the only year I ever did something was the first year I ever played, and I think it was like, I want to say it's the second or third year. I got in pretty early, and I won the Consolation Bowl. So everybody who did make the playoffs, I won that one. So I beat 500 people or whatever it was at that time. And I got some cool prizes, but that's the best I had ever done. I mean, I've made some playoffs and that kind of stuff, but I've never gotten to those later rounds or later, whatever you call them, cuts. They usually, because again, I'll try weird things. I mean, I was already putting together my Scott Fish Bowl for this Saturday, and I'm downloading kick returners because now there's a big thing with points of kick street. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what you're overthinking it.
I'm gonna save you some time. Don't bother. I just did mine, and there's 3 or 4 that are worth anything significant.
Yeah, right.
But they're so late in the day, and they're not giving you a high variance. That they're not giving you what a kicker would give you.
Right. Well, and what we don't know is what this new kickoff rule is going to do.
Yeah.
Like, we have nothing to base it on outside of the XFL. Now, these super quick, fast guys, like if Achin could return kicks for the Dolphins, that would be awesome. But, they also feel like you need physical, stronger returners because you're going to get hit not as fast or as hard. So you might be able to bounce off some of those guys and make a path. But who knows? I mean, until, I have a feeling like during preseason, every kick return for a touchdown, Scott Fish Bowl, things are going to catch fire because everybody will be jumping to the waiver wire to try to pick up that player, whoever they are.
Oh, 100%. And there will be, and they'll spend all the money on it.
Yeah, right. And then it'll be broke by week 3.
Which is kind of how it works at the Scott Fish Bowl. Everyone sits there and holding, and then they end up blowing all their money. I wanted to go through because with this view of the charity leagues upon us and these big tournaments, I pulled up the book and I'm going to go through some of the wide receivers that I think at cost could be, and there's some caveats to this and some asterisks. Sure. But there's some, and I'm not going to give the whole book away because people should go out and buy it. But ultimately, I think there's some really good, I'm going to look at the wide receivers first, and I'll go to running backs. Number 3, the third ranked wide receiver last year in terms of clutch rate was Keenan Allen. Now, obviously, it's very different. He's on a different team. He's got a different quarterback throwing to him. There's a bit more mouths to feed. But considering he's going off in the Scott Fish Bowl and I'll tell you where he's going if you give me a second, because I do have this up. He is going off the board at, let me reset this. This is terrible audio. Keenan Allen is going off the board at 83 on the board. That's quite late.
Around 7-ish, 6, 7.
Yeah. So he's going off the board in that range. And listen, I think you can lose a lot of the ceiling. But considering of all things, he was the third highest ranked wide receiver in terms of his clutch rate percentage. You have to look at that and think there's a really good value in someone like Keenan Allen. And to give you an idea, the range he's going in. Okay, so he is going in similar ranges to these are the players going sort of near either side of him. Zay Flowers, Hollywood Brown is going a few spots after him.
Okay.
Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, all these kind of guys are sprinkled a few spots either side. So I'm looking, and then this is where consistency, I think, plays a big part. Is you're looking at those guys, you can make the case for Flowers, fine. But I look at the rest of those guys, Hollywood Brown, I look at, Christian Kirk, if you're shooting for the ceiling, makes sense. I get that play. You can make a case for him. Well, I'm looking at the other players around him. I'm looking at those guys. Roman Dunze's only going about 10 spots after him. Not going there.
Yeah, no, I'm not going there. Yeah, that's everybody who loves to pick the shiny new toy.
Yeah, exactly that. Amari Cooper, who's going 9 spots ahead of him. No. George Pickens. No. I think you can make the case here for someone like Keenan Allen and go, well, based on that consistency, you're getting him at a wide receiver 3 price. He definitely fits that criteria of a player who you can build a really good base off. One I think that is going to jump up quite miraculously is number 11 on your list is Michael Pittman. Now, Michael Pittman had an 81% clutch rate, which is impressive considering he had a backup quarterback throwing to him half the season. So you pair the upgrade in quarterback he's going to get this season, assuming Anthony Richardson stays fit the whole season, and there's a case that he can jump from 11 to top 7 or 8. Maybe even higher than that. I have him higher than that, but not everyone does. He's going off the board at ADP 50. So ADP 50, and so some names that are going around here. Yeah. Nico Collins, who ironically is right next to him in this clutch rate percentage. Mike Evans, who I think will have a dip this year. DK Metcalf, who's also on the list. So this list is formed quite nicely with ADP here. Stephon Diggs, Jalen Waddle. And I'm just sitting here looking at this range of players that you're getting in, and this is all within a few picks. DJ Moore is on that list, who again, you've got Collins, Pittman, and Moore all in the same place there. And you're thinking like, hey, Pittman did this with a backup quarterback for half a season.
Right.
And then he's going in that same tier, and he had an 81% clutch rate percentage, which was only beaten by 1, 2, 3. See, it was the 5th highest.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So, again, you look at these and you think, well, that just makes sense. That's my differentiator. The guys going around him are in the same ADP range, are also similar on this list. Evans, Collins, Pittman, Moore, all in a similar range. But actually, you can make the case of, okay, so he can get better. He can exceed that.
I mean, I did a Scott Fishbowl mock the other day, and I was the 5th pick. And when it came back to being round 5, I was 3 picks away from Pittman, and I literally had him at the top of my queue, and he went, like I said, 3 picks before me. I ended up taking Evans. It was kind of a tie between Evans and Diggs, but I took Evans at that point. But yeah, I was really hoping Pittman would fall to me at that and he would have been my first receiver because I went dual quarterbacks first 2 rounds with Lamar, Dak, Kyle Pitts, and then Josh Jacobs actually really wanted Derrick Henry and missed him by 1 pick. But yeah, I mean, I think Pittman's one of those that if he falls in any draft, where you can even get, especially if you can get him as your wide receiver 2, like if you start off in a traditional draft, we'll step away from Scott Fishbowl for a minute, but traditional draft where, you pick a Chase, Jefferson, wherever, whoever in that first round, Monroe, St. Brown, those kind of Tyreek Hill, CD Lamb. If you can come back and get Pittman in round 2 or early round 3, that'd be fantastic, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think if you can pair him with Richardson or Taylor, and you get a lot of that offense with Shane Steichen, I think you're going to really go to the moon there. And I think having that pair, I think, puts you in really good stead. So, I definitely think there's a great case there for him. And again, the fact that he's on your consistency list, only 4 or 5 other guys beat that number last year in terms of his clutch rate, and he had a backup quarterback throwing to him, and he's got paid. You can paint this story really nicely for someone like him. And again, you're saying, using this alongside other tools, but also using it alongside your knowledge. I'm looking at that jumps right off the page and affirms all my belief that Michael Pittman is an undervalued wide receiver, and I'm going to attack him in drafts in all formats quite hard this year. I'm going to give 2 steals here. Mike Williams and Cortland Sutton you can get in the 12th round. Now, both these guys appear on your list. Mike Williams is a bit of an asterisk because he did only play 3 games last year, but he did reach that clutch game in 2. So, having said that, in those 3 games, he was elite in 2 of them. And he is on a new team. It's Aaron Rodgers. It will take some time, but a 12th round pick in this format, you're looking at a guy who was ranked 14th in on your list.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, which is always Mike Williams' big issue, that's, and Garrett Wilson on the other side, hard not to be successful, right? Or
and again, I look at where you're getting the range of players around him. So in that ADP range, you're getting Curtis Samuel. It's never really happened. Jerry Jeudy, okay, I can see that, but again, he's been remarkably inconsistent. Jahan Dotson, again, has never really done it. Josh Palmer, again, has never really done it. These are all the guys around. The only guy in this range I would take over him is Jacoby Myers, who I was surprised was not on your list.
So he is on my list, actually, down below, actually in the back pages where it's the undervalued players. And this is what it says. I'll read it out of the book. I said, if you're rolling your eyes because at this one, before you read it, check out Myers' fantasy numbers last season on page 99. Welcome back. Are you shocked that he was 24th in total points and 29th in consistency? Because most people are. So he's going like as wide receiver 45, 46 in round 10. Most drafts I've been in, and I'm 90% sure. Yeah, I took him in round 13 in this SFB mock draft. And this guy was 24th in consistency or 29th in consistency, top 24 in points. People just don't think about it because he didn't do anything special.
And again,
he was just
with a backup quarterback.
Just there, 10 to 12 points a week. Doing what he needed to do. He's the other side of Davante Adams. Aiden O'Connell did well with him, so now he's got a little bit better quarterback in Minshew. So, why would you not take him?
Exactly that. The other player on your list, ranked 24th in consistency, and he's largely forgotten about, and you can get him on the 11-12 turn, is Cortland Sutton.
Yeah, right.
And I am shocked that you can get Cortland Sutton that late in the Scott Fish Bowl. Like, and charity leagues. And again, I guess because he's never really shot the lights on. Like, he's never really had the big season. I know there's the sit out rumors that's not going to happen. I think you've got to put those numbers together and sit there and go, he is. Again, 24th in consistency he was last year, and he had
a lot of touchdowns. But he's the only one they got. So who's else they got to throw to?
And Brett Ripien was throwing him the ball last year,
right? They're like the Browns. They had a different quarterback every week.
Exactly that. Like, he still put up some performances. So again, you can tell the story of improvement there. I like that. The running back story is kind of familiar. A lot of guys put up pretty consistent numbers. The one player here that I think we should sort of focus. Oh, there's two. Let's start with the overdrafted player in the list here, and it's Saquon Barkley. Now everyone's rushing to get Saquon Barkley on their teams this year. He's going off the board as the RB5. I don't get it because consistently he's never been anywhere near that performance except for his rookie year. He was 13th in percentage last year. In consistency, he was the RB13 last season in total points. And he's on a team that doesn't like to have one running back run exclusively.
Well, and you also have a team that when it gets to the 1 yard line, they're not handing the ball to the running back. So, maybe now if he gets half of those touchdowns that, that Hurts had last year, maybe, but they also like to throw the ball and they've never really done much with the running back. So, yeah, I probably won't draft Barkley in any league I'll be in. I mean, I guess it's always, you never say never. Like, okay, if I'm sitting around 6 and everybody passed out from a, lack of oxygen or something, I don't know, but then maybe I take Barkley, but I just don't see it happening for me. There's so many other running backs that I like more and feel more comfortable with based on where they're at, how they're set up, how the team has performed in the past with running backs in that role. That Barkley probably won't be on my team.
Yeah, I agree more. Couldn't agree more. Let's talk about the guy who's number 4 on your list, because for me, he is the most criminally underrated running back this year on lists. So, he scored a clutch game in 11 out of 13 games. So 85%, ranked 4th overall. He managed to sneak an RB1 season despite being suspended for 3 games. And he's currently going off the board in Scott Fishbowl drafts at 70.
Ooh.
Which is round 6, end of round 6. And Alvin Kamara, that is I've talked about this all offseason. I think Alvin Kamara is the most wonky priced RB. I don't get his ADP at all. I'm buying him around over the average every time.
Yep. Absolutely.
The
only thing that scares me is this holdout, but I don't think that'll be a problem. No. But yeah, and now he's got a new OC line coach that does an amazing job with the blocking schemes that could give him more room to run. And I didn't get Kamara in that league. My draft, the Scott Fishbowl draft, but I've drafted him multiple times as my RB2 or 3, sometimes RB3 if people wait long enough, because it's just too good to pass up. Because once you get to that level, there's only maybe 1 or 2 other guys I like. One is Montgomery, and the other one is who was it? I'm trying to think. Zach Moss. I like him. But again, you're looking at rounds 8, 9. But if Kamara's around there and it's between Ramondre Stevenson and DeAndre Swift and Najee Harris, and I like Zamir White too. That's another one I like. But Montgomery's the only other one I might take in front of Kamara, just because he was even more consistent last year than Kamara was at number 4 at 86%.
Yeah. And I think, for me, Kamara is just a massively underpriced asset, and I'm snapping him up. I'm going to give you one more name who I looked at. He's going off the board. If I told you could get a guy who is the starting running back on his roster, who was on your list of top 24 performing RBs in terms of consistency, but you could get him as the RB 36 in the Scott Fishbowl in round 11. What would you say to that?
I would say that's Gus Edwards, Devin Singletary. I don't know.
Brian Robinson Jr.
Oh, Brian Robinson.
Brian
Yeah.
Robinson Jr. is available in the 11th round.
Yeah,
And
he went
I
round
just think-
13 in this mock draft.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah.
Again,
Right.
I'm snapping him in the 9th or the 10th. Or I'm not letting that be a conversation piece to anybody
I hear
because
you.
he is so consistent. He's so underrated. People go, Eckler this, Eckler. Eckler's not a real traditional running back. He's just a
Right.
guy who's going to get targets and like crack on. It'd be great. But yeah,
Mhm.
this is where the guide is so valuable because if you're thinking of building your roster with high, like undervalued assets, identifying undervalued assets and using them to build really strong, consistent players in those middle rounds, like I've done, you'll build a pretty good caliber roster. So, Bob, before you go, tell everyone where they can buy the book, where they can get a copy of it, and tell everyone where they can find you and everything that you do.
Appreciate that. At Bob_Lung on Twitter, at the FF Expo, also on Twitter. The book, of course, you can get on Amazon in whatever country you're in. Just should be able to get it in 2 days printed. So check it all out. The Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Just type in 2024. Probably could type in 2024 Consistency Guide to probably pop up. You may not even have to put fantasy football, but do it anyway. So definitely check that out. Get the book. You'll get it in 2 days, usually if you're Amazon Prime. If you're in the States, come to thefantasyfootballexpo.com. Get your tickets. Come join us in Canton for a nice 3-day fun weekend. And as always, Murf, honored to be here. Pleasure. Good luck. Well, good luck to everybody who's doing the UK FFC. So Hannah, Dan, everyone, hope to be there in a couple more years. And as always, thanks for having me on, brother.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Again, get yourself a copy. I'm going to link this into the show notes. And look, I buy this every year. Bob didn't send me this. I buy it every year. It's a valuable tool. It's £11 something. So, it's one of the first things I buy every single season when it comes out.
Thank you.
And, it builds up so much of my toolkit in terms of building that floor, knowing where to get players, and builds my strategy. So, I have a lot of success off it. You will too. But get a copy. You heard it from Bob. Let's go out, enjoy. Happy 4th of July. Enjoy it. And to everybody else, enjoy Election Day and everything else. And until later, Rush Nation, as always, don't forget, keep rushing.